Welcome to the Town Hall for 2020. I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Michaels.
Thank you everyone for joining us on this peculiar yet exciting Town Hall event in 2020. First, I'm going to start off to my left with introductions. Councillor Nelson. We have Councillor Hawes, Councillor Wong, and Councillor Magoon, and myself, Mayor Michaels. Unfortunately, Councillor Stashik and Councillor Race could not attend. They sent their regrets. The tradition of a town hall meeting is something deeply rooted and deeply important for our community. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we won't get the true effect of what a town hall should be. So if this sounds or feels a bit different, the idea is we're not going to be able to deliver that. I think elected officials, and I hope everyone agrees, should be put on the spot. People should be able to come here, ask tough questions, and have follow-ups. Unfortunately, because we're online, it's going to be a bit different, but we are always here, and I hope this tradition continues, and in 2021, it will be hopefully a little better. So with that, we'll start with our questions, and I'll hand it back to Heather, and we'll go from there.
All right, our first question this evening is from Mrs. Maureen Harper. She's wondering, why does the bylaw office repeatedly refuse to post obvious Town of Hinton no hunting signs near the bike park and disc golf areas along Robb Road?
Thank you for the question, Maureen. I guess I'll take the first crack at it, and I'll open it up to any of the currently, right now, the administration is looking at the signage. Like anything else in our community, it's about finding the point of excellence, and there are certain areas, as Maureen pointed out, that aren't perhaps at the highest level. So I'd like to thank Maureen for bringing that forward. And the administration is looking at that. And again, I think our council, we have a decision to make with every single topic question. Is whatever we're talking about, specifically your signage, is it properly funded? And then if it is properly funded and we're putting enough money to deliver that, is the service actually good enough? And that's what we want to examine. And having a new CEO looking at that, it's about making sure that what we have to offer is held at a very high level and it's funded appropriately. We'll take that into consideration. And that's kind of my take for that question. What else?
Yeah, first of all, Maureen, thanks for your question. First of all, thanks for bringing it to our attention that that's an area of concern. I think it's well timed. We've just sort of wrapped up working with the disc golf course and other stakeholders in that area in terms of trying to expand our services, looking at creating some partnership agreements out there. So I think now is actually a really opportune time to look at the concerns that we have and try to apply them moving forward. So yeah, that's something I'll happily speak to when we look at trying to enhance safety, which is really the root of why we began looking at the area around the bike park and Robb Road most recently. So thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, next question.
We're going to follow up with another question from, this one's from Bill and Maureen Harper. Why are you continuing to have frequent in-camera meetings?
Very, very good question. I spoke about this a while ago, and I'll give my take and then I'll open it up to the floor. I really believe municipal officials become comfortable. So you're in a structured meeting, the cameras are on you, the mics are on. People feel a little bit less maybe structured in a way of knowing what they're going to say and how long they're going to speak, and they usually go on the side of caution and talk less. In cameras, actually the opposite. So now you're close to the public, you have a topic in place, and people just talk, I think, a bit more freely. So seeing that this has been a topic that's come up, and I agree, we should be spending a lot less time in camera. And I think in the last 3-4 months, we've brought more attention to that. And I hope as a council, we're a bit more cognizant on the fact that, hey, are we acting a bit different or more comfortable in camera than we are outside? And if so, we have to address that. And the second one is, when it comes to things that are protected under FOIP, so which allows you to go in camera, we have a decision as a council to make. This is something that I struggled with in the past was, just because something is protected that we could potentially go in camera, is it also protected to talk about in public? Because some things are gray, they're a bit strange. And then that conversation could veer off slowly into something else that, okay, maybe that's public. And that's really a skill to make sure that it hey, we're going to go on camera just for one topic. And if the moment we veer away, we have to go other camera. These are things that we weren't practicing and doing. And I think in the last, like I said, 3-4 months, we're doing a better job. So I look forward to the stats in July, and August, or taking almost a year and say, hey, how have we got better? And if we haven't, then we as a council have to step up and say, okay, what is our target? We have to do more. So that's sort of my take on that. Anyone else? Councilor Haas.
I just want to say too, I mean, we've had been faced with a lot of whether it be personnel or whether it be different legal matters in regards to organizations and contracts and things like that. So we've had a lot going on, which more going on means maybe a little bit more in camera that's required of us as well. But as Mayor Michael said, if you were to compare, a lot of those things have changed and our conversations are more focused and more due diligent of what's in fact and what's in private.
Thanks, Councilor Haas. Anyone else? All right, next question.
All right, we do have a follow-up question coming through the YouTube stream from Jan Vasbotten. He's just wondering if you could speak to whether or not signage will be considered at the Himba Trail cross between the town boundary.
Anyone want to take that? I can speak to it, I think, quickly. I think working with the administration and finding out what are the costs, what are really the level of standard that we use, and that really falls on council. If there's a cost that's attributed to that, we have to take that in consideration for 2021. And I can speak for myself. We haven't seen the whole budget. We haven't had those conversations yet, but that would be something I would support. Obviously, Himba, disc golf, that area is a huge tourist attraction for our community, and it should be marketed. And we're not talking huge dollars either. So if is that going to be somewhat of a priority at a low cost? For me, it is. Anyone else? Councilor McGinn?
Yeah, and Jan, I wish I knew the specific context of the signage you were talking about. If it's relating to what Bill and Maureen brought up regarding safety, then I think, absolutely. But even if it's not, I think as long as we're approaching it with a long-term approach, I'm thinking about what our costs are going to be regarding certain signage over a long term with upkeep, maintenance, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm certainly happy to look at that in terms of the budget and seeing where it falls into. If you could actually maybe give us a follow-up email or drop by and let us know in person what the details around that are, that would be appreciated for me. I'd love to know more.
Anyone else? All right, next question, please.
All right, this question is surrounding snow removal, and it's derived from Hinton Listens, just some of the regular questions that we see on a fairly regular basis. What level of service does Hinton Town Council feel can and should be expected in residential areas? Does Hinton Town Council intend to focus on this service level in the coming winter months?
Our service level for snow is pretty difficult, not higher than most municipalities. It's something that we need to work with. For me, it's not upcoming budget. It's not something I'm looking to personally add more to, and I think overall we do a pretty good job. We do a lot of the things that municipalities don't do, and maybe doing their own side of the houses to deal with, blocking driveways. So we have, I would say, probably the top 25% now of snow clearing, and I'm pretty comfortable with where that's at personally.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Anyone else? Councilor Haas?
Just from perspective, and I appreciate Councilor Nelson, I agree with Councilor Nelson. I traveled the region before COVID, many winter months in different communities surrounding us, and I would say the same thing. Our snow removal is, I think, above and beyond a lot of communities around us. Our due diligence. Is there some efficiencies that maybe our administration is looking at? I imagine there are. There's discussion around budget efficiencies, but I do feel that our snow removal it's never going to be perfect, as Councilor Nelson said. It just isn't, and never fast enough. But I think for the most part, we do a very good job that way. So I think there's other areas of the budget that we need to look at and consider more
Yeah, I'll add one comment to that. Again, I think a lot of these things come down to two things. It's the service delivery and it's the funding. I do believe the funding is generally, that we're funding relatively well compared to other municipalities with, the same density of population. And the other one, and this is about building a culture of excellence. And I say this all the time. In the private sector, it's totally different. You're a business, you could be 5 out of 10. You could provide pro service. It's not as bad because as a consumer, you just go to another business, a competitor. When you're a municipality, your challenges are a bit different. You have to be at the top of your game because there's no substitute. You can't ask another company to plow your roads, to cut your grass. And I think with Ms. Olson, our council, customer service, being there and serving the public is the #1 priority. So it's finding those efficiencies, as Councillor Haas said, and saying, hey, are we delivering this 10 out of 10 all the time? Are we diverting the snow in one area instead of another area? And we get feedback like that, and there are changes that happen. But we have to make sure to just always be on top of that. And from an administration's perspective, starting with Emily down, are there ways to do something better? And if there is, and I've had many conversations, I know other councillors have, provide that feedback to council or to administration, and we can look, hey, does this actually make sense? Can we provide a better service delivery with the same cost? And for that matter, even though a lot of us spoke to liking the amount of money, at the end of the day, if there's a true will for the community, anybody who thinks that we should be spending more on snow removal, they want it at an extremely high level, share your thoughts. Because at the end of the day, maybe that's the expectation of the community. But right now, I'm hearing more people than not are liking it overall, but we'll still strive to be better. All right, anyone else? Okay, next question, please.
All right, again from Hinton Listens. This one is related to our homeless population. There are numerous challenges for individuals experiencing housing loss or similar in winter months. What supports are available in the town of Hinton, and how does council intend to work to provide further support to residents in a pandemic environment?
I think starting organizations like HELP, combined with, it's really a housing strategy as that it was mentioned. Do we have enough dwellings in our community? Are we providing enough places to cover every demographic? That's monetary, that's whether it's people who are seniors, who are almost becoming seniors, or young families. It's finding that balance and partnering. Something that I truly believe in, and I say this all the time, that it is organizations like HELP, all kinds of organizations that truly drive our community and find those little cracks, those gaps. And we have to empower them and make sure that we don't get in their way, and we do whatever we can to find those partner opportunities. And I know grants have came up lately, and we have to do better. We have to not only be average at grants, we have to be the best community, or at least aim. And there are partner grants, private sector, not-for-profits, and municipality grants out there that we've never really targeted. Are we doing enough for that? So that to me is our approach. That we're looking to work with people in our community, and we have to find those opportunities as an administration, as a council, to work with them. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is to recognize the really tremendous volunteer work that's being done by a lot of organizations in our community. And through our partnerships like it's 2-on-1, where really the goal is to use a service like that to connect people with the service that they need at a given time, because everybody has unique needs and comes from a unique context. So as we're looking at things like homelessness or lack of food or other needs, it's services like 2-on-1 that connect us with the right people at the right time, because there are people in the community who are working quite hard to make sure that we're taking care of our most vulnerable. That being said, I think the other role council has, though, is to pay attention to what's being done well in other communities and try to apply it in our own, and or listen to the community and see, what cutting edge ideas do we have to make things better for our most vulnerable sectors. In case Edson is looking at the concept of doing like sleeping pods. So again, partnering up, finding out how that project is going with them, following that through, that is successful.
units to Abbey Creek, that opened a year ago, which isn't necessarily homelessness, but definitely covers that social housing aspect of 9 families and 9 people that have housing at an affordable rate. So it's incremental, it's hard work, and it's really slow. And we have an emerging pandemic and job loss. It's probably going to have to be really thoughtful and about take the opportunity to
Councillor Hodges.
And really, I just want to add to the MAP program that was offered last year too, was all based on volunteer. And on a very small handful of volunteers that unfortunately, took their own time to do it. But I mean, it takes a lot more people to create programs like this. Unfortunately, our community doesn't have specifically an organization. We have help, but they are limited in what they can do as well. And it relies on volunteers. And and so if there is an interest out there, is to get a hold of help, talk to them about, if they want to provide some sort of volunteer or whatever, but we need a bigger group of people. Well, we look at what's happening in Edmonton right now, but they have, the opportunity for a building that wasn't being used to now house, people that are homeless. And unfortunately, right now, we as in Hinton don't necessarily have that. We have a limited amount, whether it's a basement of a church or, basement of somewhere else. So, it's these things that make it a little more difficult. But I think with the community working together, solutions can be found. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. All right, next question.
All right, Council, we're just having a bit of an issue with some of the audio, so we're going to try one more question for now. It seems as though we might have things sorted out. However, we may need to just take a bit of a break, but we'll see how it goes. Next question is from Bill and Maureen Harper again, wondering, with large amounts of money set aside for legal fees, what is the background for this use of taxpayer money?
Great question. This is a difficult one because obviously when it comes to legal fees and challenges, which could be a wide range of whether it's a lawsuit, all kinds of things of that nature, we're limited. And I know this, I don't want this to sound like it's a cop out or whatever, but these are things that we simply can't just disclose and openly talk about at the end of the day. So I wish there was more details on that. I saw that question earlier. Honestly, I'd have to do more background research on figuring out what kind of message or what kind of specifics can we talk about without getting into the specific details, finding maybe comparables, and then seeing, is there something systemic? Is there something in the organization to some extent? Because I think it's a valid question. At the end of the day, every dollar that's spent is a taxpayer dollar, and understanding what this is going to is valid, and taxpayers should know to the extent of what we're allowed to. So very good question. I know it's not a great answer, but we're limited, but I look forward to finding out, is there more information we can share with that? Anyone else? Councillor Hodges.
I would like to add too that, I mean, let's face it, we're a multi-million-dollar type of corporation, and legal matters are going to come up, whether it's personnel matters, whether it's, how we conduct business sometimes. And it's not only, let's face it, the legal matters may be from us and maybe from others, but we're a multi-million-dollar corporation. I would beg that no corporation doesn't have legal fees from time to time. And those legal fees, as much as, we would like to share that, but it's information that we're unable to share to the public. And it's just the cost of doing business and the type of business that we are in, and we try to mitigate that as much as possible with the different policies and different things of administration. But at the end of the day, sometimes it happens. And let's face it too, legal fees, we use those legal fees to also make sure our due diligence and efficiencies and making sure that we're doing the right thing as well. So there's a cost of doing business that way as well. So.
Councillor Hodges. Councillor Watt.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. I think the other thing to remember is legal fees are nothing new in an organization of this nature. I think what a lot of people are talking about right now is the fact that it was actually transparently separated out in a line item in the last budget, and as opposed to coming out of the generic reserve, HR, or anything like that. So I understand the frustration about not knowing details. Details can't be revealed to a large extent. I agree with Mayor Michaels. Maybe we can work on communication about just kind of where this might be going to the extent we can. But the one thing I do like about it is that people can talk about it and get frustrated because it was separated out in the line item. So the public was at least aware. So.
Thank you, Councilor Watt. Councilor Magoo?
Yeah, I think being one of the last to speak, I'm going to echo similar comments. Is that, yeah, we're a multi-million-dollar corporation. Legal fees are something that corporations deal with. I mean, to assume otherwise, I think just not realistic. That being said, I think the real question that the taxpayer wants to know is their money being spent wisely? And are these legal fees that are happening that they can't know about because they're protected by legal issues? Is it necessary? And that's a fair question. And I think really, the best that a council can do, in line with what the mayor and Councilor Watt said, is really try to look within the organization and task, our one employee, the CAO, with explaining to council, are these costs necessary, or as the mayor said, is there a systemic problem at work? And if that's the case, then it's the job of council to task the CAO with cleaning those issues up, because we just can't have large numbers of dollars being wasted, if that's the case, on legal fees. But if they're not, if they have been necessary, then that's something that the CAO has to make clearly plain to council with as much transparency as possible, which, as Councilor Watt had mentioned, that's why the community is able to see it at this point, is because it has been separated from what, first times that I've seen is it's been made very plain to the public. And I think that's something to be proud of, is that we want the community to know where your money is going so that we can ask those hard questions. They're important. We'll try to be as transparent as possible within the bounds of the law, and advocate that your tax money is being spent the right way.
Thank you, Councilor Magoo. Councilor Nelson?
I think one of the other things to be conscious of and considerate of is these are budget numbers, not necessarily what's spent. So when we do our financial updates, the actual numbers are reflected. And building off of what Councilor Watt said, we were spending a lot of this money anyways, it just wasn't budgeted for. So it's coming out of reserves and it's unbudgeted. So we've actually been budgeting for it, which does make it more transparent. And when we do these financial updates, ask each one of us, did you get an update on the legal costs? Where are we year to date? Where is it going to end up? And potentially, are there any items within that now that it's through the legal proceedings could be shifted? And that may be for some items that it can. So I think it's something that continues to get better. And part of it is that we can actually talk about it and people are asking us tough questions about it. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Councilor Magoo?
Yeah, just to build off of that too, when I first started on council in 2012, I actually, again, consciously remember getting specific updates on legal fees and what the costs were in an updated fashion. I mean, outside of what the budget presented. And those are things that are happening more often. So I do think the transparency is increasingly there. And then for me, that's healthy.
Thank you, Councilor Magoo. Anyone else? All right, next question.
All right, switching gears, we're headed over to the Beaver Boardwalk. So this question comes in through YouTube, and Jan is wondering if there's any consideration for developing a Beaver Boardwalk committee that has public citizens on it, possibly a not-for-profit society that could be put in charge of taking care of it.
Absolutely great question. Anyone want to take this first? Councilor Magoo?
Yeah, I think one of those full stop questions, there needs to be a publicly based committee where we have stakeholders from the community who are interested in ensuring that area is developed well, sustainably, and with vision and purpose. And I think really that's the next stage. That's what we're looking at implementing there. And I'll sort of back off and let our people members speak to that. Thank you,
Councilor Magoo. Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, I stood on that committee in our last meeting. It was a lot based around, this committee's gone longer than expected because of delays to a lot of processes, but the conversations at what point do we figure out the formal future and sustainable governance of the Beaver Boardwalk? It's going to be a short-term committee made up by a small group. And hopefully I think January 5th is the Tuesday, it'll be on the agenda to have some of those discussions. But at least for me personally, and from what council has told me as a representative on that committee, we want there to be an advisory board, something similar to some way to have group focus on it that are all stakeholders, all passionate about it. I think the Beaver Boardwalk, as much as it's been a really big challenge for is really making some good strides. There's reviews happening for wetland policy right now that hopefully will streamline this. So it's not necessarily going to help our project a whole lot, but hopefully other municipalities that are going to face in the future will learn from some of the challenges that we've gone through. So I think we're on the right track, and the quicker we can get some public as part of the advisory board, the better.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. And really, at the end of the day, and I know Jan asked this question, but whether it's him or disc golf, I'm a true believer. Anything that is pushed by people who are passionate about it is going to do better. At the end of the day, and it has nothing to do with either council or town staff or anything of that nature, but if you love and you breathe something, look at what happened to the disc golf course. No, I would challenge that no community in Alberta would have built a disc golf course like that if it was non-passionate people. It was just paid workers. It's different when you put your heart and soul into it. And the Beaver Boardwalk should be no different than Himba and disc golf in other places in our community. So, and on top of the extra $300,000 that we got in MSP money from the province of Alberta is, I think, going to go towards some hopefully exciting progression in 2021. Anyone else? All right, next question, please.
So hoping you can expand on that last piece. In the areas that require council approval, external funding, and extra work, what is council's expectation for the Beaver Boardwalk maintenance going forward? How will it be maintained?
Great question. Anyone want to take that one first? Councillor Nelson.
I feel like it's going to end up being really, really boring, which means a lot of replacement of what we already have, things that are crooked, making them straight. I think that's really been council's intent the whole time, is to really keep what we have and make sure it's maintained to a quality that anybody can use it. And I think that's what we're looking forward to doing. So I think really boring.
What other adjective to boring? I agree. It's going to be making sure that resource, that amenity in our community doesn't go through what it went through recently, and make sure that happens. And make the Beaver what it was intended to do, which is a great community boardwalk area. So we can't let it fail again. And I think we all together commit to making sure that does not happen. All right, Councillor Wong.
Yeah, I guess I agree with what Councillor Nelson said. I want to make sure that we replace what we currently had and make sure that footprint is maintained. I would just, if it's a boring vision, but what I'd really like to see is a process that is equally boring. And it hasn't been for the last 4 years. There's been a few missteps, and we've taken some hiccups along the way. So hopefully in the mid and long term, starting with the short term, we can start moving forward in a more predictable, boring fashion. And once this process is ironed out, this will be something that will be, yeah, like I said, predictable and boring.
The final thing I guess I want to say is sort of like just extending the baton to the next phase is if you're thinking boring is a bad answer, I think it's a good answer right now, because part of our dialogue was who should be creating the future of the boardwalk, and it should be that committee we were talking about the last time. We need public input, we need people who are part of it in order to set the future of it. So right now, doing the status quo and then having a committee in place, who knows what could come from that. But I think this is a limited, fair transition to who knows what that committee is going to look like. And then from 2021 and beyond, there will be a huge amount of opportunities for the community in itself to progress the boardwalk. All right, next question, please.
In the same area, this question is related to the Maxwell Lake Bridge. After major citizen protest, why has the bridge at Maxwell Lake not been removed to be used elsewhere, for example, at the far end past Eden Estates, or sold and replaced by a locally built bridge and approach?
Great question.
Anyone courageous enough to? Councillor Nelson.
I'll give it a rip. To be totally honest, that bridge isn't going to go anywhere. It was built, it was approved. The actual cost of the bridge wasn't as much as has been said. A lot of it comes to a lot of work to install it. This decision was made in 2017. And the cost to remove the bridge, it isn't really that feasible. And I really believe that the bridge itself is not the issue. The communication around the bridge was what the issue was. There wasn't a lot of transparency at the start, and prior to that bridge going in, there wasn't a lot known about it. And when it went in, that bridge could have been the best looking bridge ever, and I think people still would have been quite excited about it. So to me, the bridge is the bridge, and I think once the boardwalk is done, it will be an important part of it. But it's a communication thing. And something the council could have and should have done a lot better of letting people know exactly what we're doing, what the plans were. And to me, that was our failure on that more so than the actual physical proof itself. So,
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Anyone else? Councillor Good?
Yeah, I think the important thing to consider is the fact that I think the process is what caused a lot of the concern involving that bridge. Originally, when it was brought forward to the last council in the 2017 budget, it was proposed that it would grant us better fire access, fire rescue, especially with the urban wildlife interface there, or pardon me, wildfire potential interface. Putting the bridge would get quicker access, easier access there for firefighters. The issue, of course, arose when it came into the APP and the wetlands interface, and that was just something that had never been encountered by the town before at that level. And again, you can't just plow through the work. If AEP says we've got a problem, you have to stop, respect the process. There were certainly some learnings that the town had in that process. And again, that's why it's really slowed up what happened there with the bridge. That's the issue for sure. The second thing is, and for me, this is a really important learning for myself. It comes down to the capital budget process. I remember being on the council of the day and discussing the bridge as a line item and being told, at a high level, this is what the bridge will look like, this is how it will function. And then, of course, when you're delivered the bridge, it's not exactly what you had a mental picture of. And so, it causes a question of how do we approach capital budgeting as a transparent process? That's where I think the real issue is, because that impacts us not just 2017, but every year moving forward. So, I mean, that's another consideration to add to the issue itself and budgeting moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Councilman Good. That was going to be my point. The three individuals at my far right weren't even part of that decision making. That was the last council, Councilor Magoo and myself were part of it. But that entire council, we all chose not to dive into that one deeper because it was a line item. It's like an omnibus bill, which I don't like. You look at a capital budget for a whole year and you have an item that can have huge societal impacts or political impacts, and you deal with it as literally a one-line thing. That is not good governance. And in hindsight, that's the mistake I made. I wish we would have been able to pull that and say, administration, bring us a report. And I hope we build a culture, and I think our expectation is things of that nature should not be coming as a one item. That should be coming for a request for decision amongst council to see the details. We need to own that, because at the end of the day, everyone knows that it was the elected officials who were paying for that. And rightfully so. We chose lack of experience, and sometimes you just trust. You don't ask the right questions. That was a mistake, and I say would have saved a lot of years off my life if we would have simply set a different expectation, and that's something we have to learn. So I hope in this budget, the 2021 budget, and so forth, there's a culture where, hey, if we want to pull something to have a report, it's not like looked upon as a bad thing. So yeah, council wants to see that because we're spending taxpayers' money, whether it's a fire truck, whether it's any item, we should have the right to do that, and we need to exercise that. So I just want to take away the blame from those three over there. That was nothing to do with them. Councillor Hans.
Comments too is we have an administration too that is also bringing some of those reports to us or bringing information to us that if we want further information on we can have. So I think moving
well, we can learn a lot from that, administration learn a lot from that, going through our other processes as well. So, so I look forward to, those line items not being items anymore. They are already being discussed and looked at, and any public feedback, is welcome as well.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor McGowan.
Again, just to touch on the budget issue, and I'm speaking for myself in this instance. I think this really highlights the importance of having a public and transparent capital budget process. That way, when the budget is laid out to the public, they can look through those line items and they can see what the specific numbers are associated with specific line items. And they also can offer their expertise. I think that's the one thing as a community, it's really that piece of low-hanging fruit. We have a ton of experience amongst our citizens in a number of different fields in this community. And we have to sort of lower the shields as an organization to that. We have to find a process to sort of encouraging that feedback to both council and administration and being welcome to hearing that. And I think that budgeting process with the capital budget is, just another example of that.
Thanks, Councilor McGowan. Anyone else? All right, thanks for the question. Next one.
All right, Bill on YouTube is wondering why the taxpayers are footing the costs on outside consultation when surely we have the experience and direction within administration.
Well, I guess depending on what consultation, because there's certain things like engineering, let's say we don't have an engineer on staff, but we'll have to use a consultant for that kind of stuff for engineering. Any specifics on the consultation, unless somebody else understands this question, Councilor Owens?
And I don't know what the specific question, but every organization also too doesn't always have every single expertise in their their consultation is part of doing business as well. We don't always have, but when and if we do have the ability within administration or within our community, we do our best. But there's also, that consultation also goes on RFP too. So we're looking at what other, what's available out there as well. So, but I don't know if it's specifically what they're referring to. So
There's two things I guess I want to add. I think from the general concept of that question, a lot falls, and I have a lot of trust in our town manager for this. When it comes to making sure that your staff in our departments have the right people to deliver the needs, that is an important aspect, right? That's going to take time. Obviously, the change in every department has to be analyzed and really say, again, our standard is very high. Do we have the right people so we're not consulting and contracting out certain things? Could we be providing this? But Edmonton is going to be different than Hinton. Edmonton has how many lawyers on hand, how many engineers. It's a totally, but that doesn't mean that we're doing it right in Hinton. So it's a valid question. We have to understand, is it reasonable? Is it actually better for us to provide A, B, or C and not go external? But another thing I want to talk about, we always talk about our partnership with the county. And I think municipal politics is shifting a lot. Now it's working with other municipalities that are similar to us. And we are luckily really in that, I don't know, is it a star shape? I don't know what it is. But we have 5 communities between 8,500 and 10,000 people. Whiteport, Drayton Valley, Edson, Hinton, and Rocky Mountain. And I talk a lot with their members of council. I know other councilors talk to people from those communities. And now our administration and our CEO Olson is talking to their administrators and looking for these efficiencies. Is there something new, or is there a different approach in order to provide services for our municipality? And when you think of it, when you break it down, the resources that county's going to provide for the residents is totally different than what we're going to provide. They have rows upon rows upon rows, maybe snow plowing techniques, but they're gravel roads. It's really different. So making sure that our departments are adequately set with the right people in combination of seeing, hey, can we partner up with municipalities to provide something, I think is an essential key. So again, without the context of the specific part of the question, that's sort of my own comment. Councilor Nelson.
Yeah, Councilor Ross brought it up with our RFP, which is request for purchase. So anything that we're putting out gets put out publicly that's over a certain dollar threshold. And when that policy actually came back to our council, we added wording that made local considerations, understanding that a local dollar spent is worth more than just a dollar. So what we find a lot in the community is when the community's busy, everybody's busy. So yes, there might be somebody that can do an engineering contract, but they've got 4 jobs on the go and they don't hit on it. So encourage people to familiarize themselves with the tendering process, sign themselves. It's an email list. It's pretty straightforward. I would love to see more of the town bids be procured locally, whatever it can be, because those others do go a lot further. So I commend our council for that. Was an addition we made towards the end of that process, and it's important for that exact reason. So thank you.
And quickly, if I can add on top of it, something else that I've learned throughout the years is, and it goes to either communicating that to the public. There are a lot of local contracts with the town, with local companies. I don't want to name one over another right now, but there's a lot, but we don't share that. We don't say, and maybe that's an opportunity for council administration to say, we do a lot of work with company A, B, C, and D from Hinton, but we just don't share that. So a lot of people are unaware that we're working with them, right? So I think there's opportunities, but there's also an opportunity to make sure that we're communicating that we have it within our policy, we're following our policy, and we're looking to do that. All right, anyone else? Councilor McGinn.
On the last question, but I think it's important enough to mention again, we have a new CAO, and I think for myself, and again, I can only speak for myself, not for the rest of council, I'd really like to see council encourage our CAO to develop a culture where, we're looking for those informal consultants that live and work in our community. I mean, the people who are willing to offer advice, who have experience in certain fields, and that it's advice that's taken and heard, not just taken or just give people a venue to speak, and then that advice is sort of, brushed away. I think we really have to create a culture within our municipal organization where citizens feel like their knowledge and experience in various areas is heard, and that they don't always just have to bring it through to council. And so, again, what am I going to advocate for moving forward with our corporate structure is asking our CEO to do just that. Because I think when the community feels like they have buy-in and that they're heard, it just makes us stronger.
Thanks, Councilor Lagoon. Anyone else? All right, thanks for the question. Next one.
All right, this one actually comes to us through Facebook from Kira, and it's a little bit anecdotal. I'd just like to let you know about a potential road hazard I've recently been having troubles with. When you are turning onto Robb Road from Switzer Drive, there is some pretty rough terrain just after the turn. I have a small car, I know, a poor choice for Hinton, but I had it before I moved up here and have not been able to afford a truck. So when going over this rough patch, I must move pretty slow so I don't bottom out my car. Are comfort type maintenance projects like this a priority for council moving forward?
Thank you for that question. Councilor Hamas has his hand up already.
Yeah, I read this question and actually I'm very familiar with that area. And I agree with this. It is very rough. It is extremely rough. Also driving a car, and I've seen many people driving that. Yeah. I'm also excited because we have our asset management program. And these are all things that I'm hoping that the asset management moving forward will address some of these issues. So there are some areas such as that they need, and where are they lifetime? Do they need to be addressed? So I think, and I'm certain that our administrative staff and our other staff are constantly also monitoring certain areas that are need to be addressed. I think there are some other areas potentially that may need to be addressed before that particular area. But I do, everyone assessment of that area, it is pretty rough, and I'm certain, even asking the question to our administration during a budget time, potentially, because we do a 5-year budget, and where are we at with our road systems, and is there any particular, where does it fall budget-wise in the next 5 to 10 years or whatever. But I do appreciate that the comments made, because those are the types of things that efficiencies that we're looking at, when it comes to our community and getting better at certain areas. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hamas. Anyone else? Councilor Lagoon.
Yeah, just to expand on the asset management system that Councilor Hamas talked about. I mean, for the layperson, basically it's a system that tracks, all the structures, all the things that make up a town. It puts an age on it, puts an expected cost over the number of years on each year, what the maintenance, the upkeep, the refurbishment will be. And it allows the town to more accurately predict what the costs of our infrastructure is moving forward. And your administration asked for that for a number of years, and it had been in the past something that was pricey on council, kind of supported by people in the last little while, and something that we've increasingly seen the importance of. Councilor Hawes.
I think that it also gives us as council the opportunity, if this is something a will of council to do, that we can make a best decision based on what other priorities are we willing to put those off to address it. This is what the asset management. So it gives us better tools to make better decisions, moving forward as to the assets of our town, whether they're below ground or above ground. So this is a prime example of how that program will assist us in the future.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Councilor Waugh.
Yeah, the other councilors have spoken to asset management and long-term view of it. But if you come across a dangerous situation like this, or a scenario that you think is dangerous that needs to be brought to our attention, there's a Hinton Listens app, there's a Hinton Listens function, or you can email anyone on council by emailing council@hinton.ca. And what we generally do is we will forward it to our CAO and bring it to administration's attention. And then hopefully they will go check it out when they get the chance and address it if it needs to be addressed quickly. If not, they'll assess the situation to see and when it might fit into the bigger picture.
Councilor Hawes.
I think, and I want to echo just, but to elaborate on that, listen, for citizens and how immediate that is what can be responded to. Our administration staff are dedicated to watching that and listen and all the comments that are made, and then be going to the appropriate departments that can deal with whatever the situation may be. And I've heard very good things about those that have used it and the efficiencies and see the change occur. Maybe not that day, but it's dealt with fairly rapidly. So I really do encourage people to use that. As Councilor Paul said, it's a really important way that citizens can communicate both with administration, and it also we then can see as administration if there is an issue, then it can be brought to council as well to discuss it in the future. Maybe there's a systemic issue for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Anyone else? All right, thanks for that question.
All right, our next question comes through Hinton Listens. How important does town council consider controlling nuisance properties, in particular as it applies to abandoned or not running vehicles and other unsightly items? Does Hinton Town Council consider municipal bylaw enforcement like this or sidewalk clearing important? What level of service should residents expect?
Thank you for that question.
This is another thing that I do. I think there's an accountability to people to look after certain things, whether it's the sidewalks and everything. I do know that from Monday to Friday we have bylaw services, and bylaw services do address certain things that we see, but it's also important for our citizens to contact through Hinton Listens, because if it is something of a nuisance, they can either go through bylaw or they can put it on Hinton Listens, and then that would be then forwarded on to bylaw services and checked on. I know bylaw tries to work with many of the citizens. It's about education. It's not all about tickets and all that for those, but if it comes to shove, that will be addressed that way as well. So for me personally, I think it's an important part of our community. It's in making the person that may be causing a nuisance may not be a nuisance to them, but not realizing it could be to others as well when we have that services. So it's something that I also advocate for as well. So personally, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes. Anyone else? Yeah, I'd like to say it is obviously important to us. It's really finding that balance. And it's something I'll be looking at in the 2021 budget for bylaw is How much are we ticketing? How many warnings are we giving? I want to create a culture of obviously change and making sure people are abiding by what the bylaws are, but at the same time, that the focus isn't just collecting fines. That can't be the purpose of the bylaw, right? In general, and there's so many programs we can put in place or do in order to inform people. A lot of people might not know that an idle car, a car that's, I forget the term, is more than 72 hours in one location, right? Some people don't know that. Are we doing everything to make sure that people know that these are the rules, right? Because I've had conversations, I'm sure other counselors have, they're like, really, that's the rule, 72 hours? Yeah, but then it also falls on council, because sometimes it within that bylaw, specifically to leaving an unparked car, it's 72 hours, or it has to seem like it's been abandoned. Well, that's partial. So maybe there's a policy approach or something, a policy level that we can look at. So I think the important thing is bring in that information to Hinton listen, as Councillor Haas said, and then we as a council can make sure that within our budget, within bylaw, that's working, in a way that we're satisfied. And is there something else at a policy standpoint that maybe doesn't make sense or makes sense and we can make better? Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, if I could, understanding that Councillor Race is not here, I think also looking at different community initiatives such as kick to the curb, it doesn't necessarily deal with vehicles left abandoned, but a lot of those things that take up space, maybe you don't have that truck to get to the dump, but utilize these kick to the curbs and maybe send some feedback that's something that is annually but could easily be turned into 2 or 3 times a year. So putting on my Councillor Race hat and understanding that it's a really good opportunity to bring out some of the community initiatives around getting rid of stuff you don't need. There's the share shop, there's NeighborLink, there's a lot of different places where things can go in order to make better use of them and also help clean everything up. So thank you.
Councillor Nelson. Councillor, anyone else? All right, next question, please.
All right, this question is from Jasmine, also related to the Beaver Boardwalk. The new bridge at the Beaver Boardwalk was built in a floodplain, and a large amount of the time it's flooded. So what is being implemented in the future regarding site-specific requirements?
Very good question. Anyone I think it comes back to the process question. It comes right back down to working with AEP to make sure that all the environmental standards and necessary observations are in place to respect and protect that wetland. That has to be first and foremost. And I think as long as we're following those steps and working hand in hand with administration and AEP, then we can ensure that it's done the right way. And we've had stakeholder groups come to us over the past year advocating just for that. Right? So we have to make sure that that's what's going on. Councillor Haas.
On the Beaver committee, and I mean, the Beaver committee can comment on this, but I mean, with the AEP involved, we've been given limited what we can do at this point when it comes to fixing the, straightening the posts and things, the boring stuff that we were talking about. When it comes to that, those are those things that the AEP will be probably coming forward with at a later date if there is issues with the floodplain and what the how to address that and things like that. So those are things that the AEP and working with them definitely will be a big part of the picture.
Councillor Haas. I guess my only other comment, and Councillor Nelson brought this up through the committee, is, as I broke my cell phone, is making sure that we have access to that, because it's a watered area, and making it accessible. And this is part of the committee was working on. Okay, how do we have access to that bridge? And in 2021, there's going to be big decisions on what does that look like? Because access is important. Because as it was said, that bridge, that decision was made a long time ago. It was costly. It's there. We have to do every other part associated. 10 out of 10. It has to make sense. It has to be accessible. It has to be not affected by any other floods, the rising of the tides for the dam. We cannot afford other mistakes regarding this, and I think the attention the committee is putting towards it, and then furthermore, in the future, the Beaver Boardwalk, hopefully committee where it has members at large in the community will play a part in that. It's about making sure that we make no mistakes moving forward, and I believe we're doing so. Anyone else? All right, next question.
All right, Jane is wondering, can council look at putting in a pedestrian crossing with lights at the corner of Carmichael Lane and Highway 16 across the golf course entrance. With the new gas and convenience store, it's become dangerous.
Thank you for that question, Jane. Councilor Haas.
Well, I'm not an expert, but I know that when we've worked with areas like that, the Highway 16, the traffic department has to be consulted with that. I know that we have lights up. We had the crosswalk near L&W. Lights were put up, but those were in conjunction with the traffic department. So that would be a question that we'd have to take to administration and link up with the highway department and see. I know it's not the only place we've talked about too. We're down by Bradwell there, and where ranchers is and stuff near there, that crossing there, how it can be also risky there too. So those are the collaborations and conversations that need to be had. But it definitely is an area, you are correct, that with the residential there and with that gas station and residential on the other side, I do see more people crossing there. So.
And what I can add to that, I don't know specifically, but it's coming back to my memory that the traffic master plan is supposed to be coming later in 2021. I don't know the exact date. That's one opportunity to look at everything holistically and say, okay, when we're talking with our fire chief, Mr. Martins, we can talk about specific areas like that, or it could be council driven, because in the last few years, whether it's St. Gregory or Mountain View, Highway 16, the crossing, there's certain areas like that, and we encourage people to share your experiences, because I live off Whistler, right? So I might not be in a certain area and know how that traffic flows, and there are things that are overlooked. So Jane, I appreciate and I thank you for sharing that. That's something that we can look individually. Now we have to weigh it. Does it supersede everything else? Is it of a huge priority right away? Or do we do it together in a few months when the traffic master plan comes to us? So I think that is bringing it to council's attention is the first step. And then we have to decide, okay, where and when do we deal with this? Councilor McGoon.
Yeah, and on that note, I think if you know of anybody else who's experienced that particular area as a concern, sharing those experiences with both council and administration is good. I think about other areas in the past, like on Mountain Street near Gerard Redmond on Moline there, or just off of Moline on Mountain Street. The more we hear stories from the community about some of these hotspots in terms of what's potentially dangerous or what's causing problems, please let us know. And then that way we can identify those as problem areas and work towards advancing a solution. But in short, yes, we can work with highways to implement safe crossing zones there. But again, respecting some of the concerns and thoughts that the mayor's brought up.
Thank you, Councilor McGoon. Council? All right, thanks for the question, Jane.
All right, council, we have reached 8 o'clock. However, we do have a few more questions, so we're going to proceed with a few more, if that's okay with you guys.
Sounds good to me.
Super. So this one comes from Dina, and she's just wondering if the town is planning on pursuing the Rapid Housing Initiative grant.
Ooh, great question. Anyone want to take that on? Councilor Nelson.
I think we're really early in it. It was announced a little while ago, but it was really focused on major cities and major centers. And just recently, the federal group has partnered with the AUMA to find a way to get it out to smaller municipalities. There's some challenges in there in that it has to be all expended in a really short period of time. So, questions, is there opportunity with Macmillan land to do something there? Potentially, but it would have to happen in really quick order. Something like the Happy Creek development that we did a year ago, fortunately was grant funded, would be perfect because you already have the blueprint, you already have the specs, it's basically shovel ready. So I think that conversations happen behind the scenes with administration, a little bit with different levels of government, and it's just a matter of whether or not we've got anything we can turn around that quickly, and whether what the needs are here are as important or more important than other municipalities as well, because that's ultimately how it's weighed sometimes. So we might not, although homelessness is an issue here, statistically, there are a lot of communities that are in a lot more dire need than we are. So it might be tricky to access it, but from what I understand, we're looking at it and trying to see if there's something that we have in our portfolio that we can use it for. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, anyone else? Councillor Haas.
I just want to add to that, and I agree that it is it's a particular fund that did come quick, and it is one of those that it does that expenditure in a quick, short period of time, that turnaround, whether it's, but it's all those things that, you know, we're all, administration and everything as an organization are looking and striving for what are opportunities there for monies, grants, whatever that's available to move our community forwards. But we are looking at a lot of communities that are also facing some of these same things and going for the same dollar. So we're doing our best in due diligence, but at the same token, it's not always available to us. It depends on, you know, what priorities other communities have and things like that. But it is, like the Councillor Nelson said, is something that they're looking into, and probably future discussion as to whether or not it is feasible for our community to proceed with that type of funding at all. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, anyone else? All right, thanks for the question.
The comments coming in from YouTube now are requesting that council readdress some of the questions related to the boardwalk due to the audio issues we were having. Is it all right with you guys if I just repeat a couple of those?
Absolutely.
All right, I believe the first one that we did was in the areas that require council approval, external funding and extra work, what is council's expectation for the Beaver Boardwalk maintenance going forward, and how will it be maintained?
Councillor Haas.
So what's going forward, you know, is what the AAP has given us the green light to do. And at this moment, there's certain areas that the Beaver Boardwalk is being it's being addressed. Any issues and concerns are being addressed at this point so that it is safe and it's accessible to our community. You know, so at this moment, that is what I understand for, in all intents and purposes. And so there's more to come, but it's when the AAP again release other areas and how to address those. So currently, you know, we have, I believe, what, $60,000 in the budget, and that's certain areas the AAP have given a green light for. So,
thank you, Councillor Haas. Anyone else? Councillor Nelson.
If we're recapping, I think the word that I used is that the things that should be expected are probably boring, in that it's a lot of exactly what we already have, but repairing it, maintaining it, straightening it, and really just keeping it what it is, except safe and accessible and in a healthy condition and a sustainable condition. So that's all I have for that one.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Nelson. All right, Council, anything else for that one? Okay, next question.
With respect to the Boardwalk Committee, I'd like to revisit Jan's question, whether or not there is council appetite for a public, perhaps non-profit committee to govern the future of the Boardwalk.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and I led off last time with that. Quite frankly, yes, there has to be. You know, it's a community asset. These are assets that shouldn't really be driven by the town or the municipality. That's not how it was developed, and that's not how it's best maintained. You know, we need the input of those stakeholders to help drive what the future visioning of that area is. So yeah, in short, yes.
Yeah, what I had said earlier is look at Himba and disc golf. When you put passion in people who want to be part of something, you always get better results that way. And the Beaver Boardwalk is no different. We have an amazing community with that just give and want to make the community better. And if we stay focused, and this council and every other council and every administration in the future works together with those who are actually the real, I consider them the real doers, and help them up, or get out of their way is another term I used to use, to make sure that things are done in the best intent, in the best way. We have to do that. So a committee with those voices is essential. All right, anyone else, council? All right, next question.
And the last one that was related to the Maxwell Lake area was regarding the bridge and the citizen protest that had occurred surrounding that item, and whether or not the bridge will be removed or transitioned elsewhere or sold.
Council.
Go ahead.
Council Nelson.
Yeah, I answered it really crudely the first time, and although I have more time, I think I'll kind of answer it just as crudely. The bridge is there to stay. a lot of it was kind of communication and process on the front end. It was approved without nearly enough public participation and communication as part of a budget item. To remove the bridge would be throwing good money after bad. Again, the bridge I think will be fine once the ramps are up to it. I think in context it will be fine. But again, it's a how we did it, not what we did. I think we could have put any bridge there, and the process and the communication around it would have had citizens really unhappy. And that's something I think we all learned from as a council, and multiple budgets we've asked for more things to come as individual items rather than as part of the entire budget. So it was certainly something I look back at as something we should have done better. And you know, the best way to learn from those sorts of things is doing something that people are really passionate about. That's the best way to learn, because you hear about it. And I respect and appreciate the amount of feedback that we've received for it. It helps us in the long run. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Magoon?
Yeah, and really this was a question for the council of 2017. That was the council that dealt with it in the capital budget as a particular line item. And I'll come to that budgetary issue in a second. It was passed as part of that budget package as being something that would facilitate a quick and rapid response for firefighters and emergency personnel from one side of the lake to the other in the event of things like an urban interface wildfire or, you know, injured folks, or, you know, people who required quick and rapid emergency first aid on the backside. And we were told, you know, it was going to be a bridge that was accessible, that, you know, could bear the weight of a small, you know, half-ton truck or a side-by-side, so that essentially, you know, first aiders and firefighters could get to the other side quick, you know. And then of course it showed up, and it was something a lot. It was not, I think, what any of us had in our mind's eye when that budgetary item was passed. What complicated that even further was the process. And that process was not communicated as something that was going to be an issue. It was brought to AEP through a complaint process, and AEP then was forced to look at and investigate that. And that's why it is where it is today, with no proper access. For myself, I'm not going to be happy until there's an ease ramp that allows all the things that we were originally promised as part of that package. Councillor Nelson's right. I don't think, you know, there's many people who won't be happy with it regardless of the shape that it takes. But again, I think that highlights the importance of Yan's initial question earlier in the evening, that we really need to make sure that we're engaging with community groups so that they control the vision of what happens out there, that this is not a town of Hinton directed vision, because it can't and it shouldn't be. The connection there as well is the importance of the budget process. This is a particular case study, highlights how important it is that the budget process is an open process that is as transparent as possible, so that citizens can look through this as a line by line item and question these issues, bring their questions to council and administration where they have concerns, and we build off of the expertise in the community to make these areas better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. And what I had said is sort of along the lines of what Councillor Magoon was saying. You know, is the council of 2013. I just want to point out, I know you just said 2017. It had nothing to do with the three gentlemen to my far right. It was us two and 5 other councillors, and all of us were kind of okay. We were okay with it. It wasn't, we got a description. We didn't know the magnitude it would play. And the lesson learned that we cannot do again is the culture that if we want to see the specifics on an item that taxpayers are paying for, we just pull it from the budget and say, we want a report on this or a request for decision. That's okay. And there was sort of an energy before. It was just kind of, well, administration is bringing that forward. And we said, okay, that was a mistake. That's a mistake that, like I said, haunted me. And it took years off my life because I was so bothered that this oversight or just almost trusting there's no room in politics for that. When it's taxpayers' money and we want to see the goods that we're getting, great. Now, there's a line to draw, and I think we're drawing it. Do I want to see a culvert come back? No. If we're going to go out and purchase a culvert or pave a road, I understand that's outside. But there are items in the community that stand out. Imagine building a brand new town hall and just putting the money and not getting any input on what it's going to look like, where it's going to be. That would be crazy. That would be nuts. That's what we did with the bridge, and that was the mistake that we have to learn. So in budget 2021, 22, and so forth, every council should feel comfortable with administration. And I think we have that culture now to say, hey, let's see a bit more about that.
Let's get public feedback. And I'm sure if we would have done that, the public would have said, $400,000 bridge looking this big, 7 times bigger, et cetera, we would have put the brakes on that. So that was a mistake we have to own. But like Councillor Nelson said earlier, we can't put bad money or good money after bad money. That was a mistake. Let's do the best we can now to make that bridge as good as it can, that's accessible, that reaches every other area that needs to be, and then we just move on. And it's unfortunate. Hindsight's 2020, but it is what it is now. All right, Council, anything else? All right, next question.
All right, we have 3 questions remaining as we've closed the YouTube comment stream. This one's very specific, wondering whether there is a master plan for the Beaver Boardwalk that we can see what is going to be done and when it is planned as related to the boardwalks.
Councillor McGoon. This is one where I think this highlights again that question that was asked earlier. The vision that this is an area that was a document was brought to council with a vision, but I don't think it's the community's vision. And it really underscores the importance of having the stakeholders and members of the community involved in fleshing out what do they want this area to look like 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And what's the maintenance plan that sort of goes along with that hand in hand, because it costs. It costs for upkeep and it costs to build these sorts of things. That has to be community driven. When we were brought that initial plan, it was very clear that wasn't what the community wanted, and so that wasn't supported. So the process that we're going to see moving forward is getting community feedback so that the future of the Beaver Boardwalk area is something that reflects the desires of the community as a whole. And that's why I think it's really important that as quickly as possible, we transition to getting those stakeholders into place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Haas.
Well, I think if I may to add, there's also the issue that there's the Beaver Boardwalk area and there's a Maxwell Lake area. And I know, and I think if I may, Councillor McGoon, the Maxwell Lake areas, I think you're right. There was it came back with it that it didn't really, stakeholder wise, it didn't fit for, what the community was looking for. But as for the Beaver Boardwalk, I mean, I think what it is, and it was mentioned earlier about it being boring, but making sure it's safe, that it's sustainable, and really doesn't change that much, right? Is that in itself, the way the Beaver Boardwalk looks, it just is maintained and into the years to come. But I agree definitely with the Maxwell Lake one. There's still some future discussion as what we want it to look like, into the future. So thank you.
Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, and I think the Maxwell Lake Outline Plan and a few other things in our term, I think really shone light on how important it is for us to show leadership early and express our vision early. The Maxwell Lake Outline Plan came back to us and it talked about a lot of things of different structures and play areas, and a lot of them were redundant to what's already in existence in the community. I also look at when the Beaver Boardwalk first came back, and there was a concept which was not directed by council at all of a $5 million concrete, largest inland, whatever it was, that was nowhere near what council wanted, but we hadn't really said at the start what our vision was. We kind of waited for something to come and then worked backwards from there. I look at the first thing we faced as a council was the animal bylaw, and that was something that we were here, we took it there, and then we had to work our way back. I think clear direction and clear vision at the start will be what helps us work towards something rather than going somewhere and then coming backwards from that. And I think a lot of credibility is lost when we do that over and over. And I think that's where I even look at the strat plan. We said, no, we want something more specific. We want something that's more accountable to citizens, something we can get specific feedback from citizens to try to get it right earlier so that we're not working backwards so often. So I think, again, we keep saying that we're learning, but I think we're on a lot better path with a lot of projects and kind of learning from what we didn't know at the start, and having turnover at the CAO position and key members of the staff didn't help. So we're really now at a foundational level that we can move forward really productively and make sure we're getting as close as we can. So thank you.
Before I go to Councillor McGoon, I want to dovetail a bit on that point. We have made mistakes for sure, but really the relationship between councillors, elected officials and administration is so vital on what drives an agenda, what comes forward. And we made an extremely tough decision after some mistakes to terminate our one employee in December of 2019, right? For a leadership change. We're trying to build a culture where we can communicate with our community, with our administration, with our council, and push forward our visions, your visions. And that was a tough decision. To me, it's a pivotal point, because we had the choice of, hey, we've been going through CAOs. It doesn't look good. We're going to get chastised for terminating another CAO, but you have to get it right. And I'm telling you, I really believe the most powerful person in the community is the CAO. And we finally have somebody in place that I think we collectively believe in, and that works with council, that works with the community, and that is essential for all these little things that are coming up, that we're talking about, mistakes or oversights. That will stop happening, hopefully sooner rather than later. But we have made some steps. We have to own them, which we are, and we have to do better. So I really wanted to communicate that to the community, that we're cognizant of it, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to get it right. Councilor McGee.
Yeah, and thanks. I think what I'm about to say builds off of what both you've sort of identified there, is the fact that I think the most important thing is that we have an administration in place that is willing to listen to the citizens as these projects are sort of coming to the fore. Because as Councillor Nelson said, the more input we can get from the community that is heard from our corporate structure and goes into requests for direction that are brought to council, the more we're cutting out those middle steps, sort of going back and forth of finding, where exactly does the community want? And in order for that to happen, we need to make sure that we empower the CAO to build a corporate structure that listens to what the community wants. And so that's, again, I know I've said it a couple times tonight, but that's important, because if, as the mayor says, we have a CAO who holds a very powerful position in the community, if they can create a corporate structure that's willing to listen to the community and consider those ideas, not just listen to the community, but actually consider what the citizens want and build that into the requests for decisions that are brought to us, that makes our job easier, and it better reflects what our community needs and wants. And I think that's powerful.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Council, anyone else? All right, last question, I think.
Yeah, given the time, this will be the last question, and then I'll turn it back over to you for closing remarks. Will there be a discussion by council again about COVID-related measures soon? What is the process? And that comes from Sarah Burns.
Thank you for the question, Sarah. Tomorrow we have an EAC meeting, Emergency Advisory Committee meeting. Obviously, we're at 9 cases. We're wishing everyone a speedy, healthy recovery. This has been a long journey for us, and I think different decisions are supposed to be made at different times, and we're in a new element right now. Having 9 cases, being on a threshold of being enhanced, we have conversations to have. So we have a meeting following our standing committee meeting tomorrow, and you'll hear more, regarding that after tomorrow's meeting. Anyone else? Councilor Magoon?
Just speaking only for myself, not representing the will of council. We have our emergency advisory committee meeting tomorrow, and I'd like to see us move forward with seriously considering the situation that we're in, and looking at what we can feasibly do as an organization to ensuring the safety of our citizens.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Council, last chance. All right, well, I want to thank everybody who joined us tonight. And I know when we started this, I thought it was going to be a bit different, but I actually felt like it was a town hall. Now, it's not the same. I still think politicians should feel a lot of people physically in front of them. And if it's tough questions, you feel it. Like, that is the human element. I wish, and I hope in 2021 we have that, because no elected official, anyone who represents, because one day we're not going to be on council and we're going to have elected officials, people should be able to have those real hard debates, questions. So I hope we translated that to people who are listening, via Zoom or via YouTube. And if there's anything, please reach out to your council. I say it all the time, council@hinton.ca. Call or text me anytime, 816-2355. Reach out to your counselor, ask them for a coffee. We are here to serve, and we are going to build a community, a culture that everyone, all 10,000
people in Hinton know that, hey, we are here to listen. We are here to implement and really be the voice that you elected us to be. So hopefully this helps, but overall, I think it went well. Any final comments from council? All right, well, thanks for joining, and thanks for everyone who participated in making this happen. Till next year. I think we can act normal now, right?
Before you guys move, if you guys could just take off your earpieces, lay them on the chair, and put your mask back on, please. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
You guys did great.
Shut it off.